All right, can everyone hear me? Does it sound good? You guys hear me back there? Maybe. All right. Is the sound working over here? Okay, good. So, thank you everyone coming down tonight. Beautiful night here at Merrymount Beach. My name is Mark Sauter. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president of the Merrymount Association here, so welcome to Merrymount Beach. The association's in its 93rd year, and we're happy to host these Meet the Candidate nights. And thank you all for coming down. Thank you for your interest in city politics and the future of Quincy. It's great to have everyone here. Thank you also to everyone who brought donations to the Germantown Food Pantry. There's a box sitting over here. We'll drop those off tomorrow. Thank you for that. Want to thank our Merrymount neighbor Joe Douillard right here for the setup on the microphones and the speakers. Without him, we wouldn't be able to do this, so thank you to Joe. Just a quick reminder, we're going to do one more of these nights. It's going to be for the school committee. And that's going to be on Thursday, September 7th at 6 o'clock. That night we're asking people to bring down a donation of either a backpack or school supplies. We're going to donate that to the charity Dove, which is a charity designed to end domestic violence here in Quincy. So please bring something down for that night and please come and spread the word. So just a quick background. I'm sure most of you all know this since you're here, but we are having a primary in Quincy for the Ward 1 position and for Councilor at Large positions. And that's going to be Tuesday, September 12th. Last day to register to vote is August 23rd. Glad that we have all four of our Ward 1 candidates here tonight. We're going to be replacing our current Ward 1 representative, Margaret LaForest, who's been the representative for the last 8 years. So it's going to be great to have all four of these candidates here answering questions that people have submitted and also giving an introduction for themselves. So again, I just want to thank the candidates for coming down. I want to thank the candidates' families for supporting them in their campaigns. It's not easy on the families, as many of you know. It's a commitment of time and energy and money, so thank you to the families, thank you for the candidates for having an interest in improving Quincy and getting themselves out there. So, enough of me on the microphone. Each candidate's going to have 15 minutes with the microphone. We're asking them to introduce themselves, give their background for 6 to 8 minutes or so, and then we have questions that people have submitted, and then we'll go have a back and forth on questions. So afterwards, feel free to talk to them as well. They have information to the side here. So we're going to start with our first candidate for the Ward 1 position, and this is Dan Davis. So please give Dan a round of applause, and Dan, come on up.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to take this off here because this is pretty annoying. All right.
Don't let it blow away.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight, and I want to thank the Merrymount Association for having all four of us candidates down here to have an opportunity to speak to you. It means a lot to me that you guys would come out here tonight. My name is Dan Davis. I'm 31 years old. I live at 155 Babcock Street down in Howes Neck. I grew up in Howes Neck. I've lived there the majority of my life. Both my parents both lived the majority of their entire lives here in Ward 1. Both my grandparents, both set of my grandparents, both lived their whole lives down here. Even my great-grandparents spent the majority of their lives down here. So being from Ward 1 isn't necessarily something where I'm just saying that I'm passionate, I really care about the people, but it's actually who I am. I have close to 100 family members who have lived or live throughout Ward 1 and call it home. Everyone in my family still refers to Quincy as their place of home. Way to go. So, I got my little sheet here in case I forgot. So, my chief concern for why I want to run is because I want to make sure that I do what's best for all of us here in Ward 1. As I mentioned, the majority of my family lives down here, and we all refer to this as home. So I feel like the city needs a counselor who's going to go out, take the best actions, and try to support what's in our best interest. One of the things that should have us greatly concerned is the chance for an overdevelopment leading throughout Quincy and throughout downtown. In an interview with the Patriot Ledger back on July 14th, Mayor Koch said that he hopes that the downtown is going to have a ripple effect throughout Quincy, and that the single-rise buildings no longer make sense. He was referring specifically to the block where Star Market is, and the block where Blockbuster Video used to be. And so it gets to a point where if you start worrying about what's happening around the city, they're going to start redeveloping the Quincy Center T Station, which then if you're expecting to have the ripple effect, it becomes to a certain point when does the sell of entire building across the street, which is single rise, no longer makes sense. When does the Coddington building across the street from Quincy High no longer make sense? When does Ginger Betty's, which is also a single rise building, no longer make sense? And they will continue to put in multi-unit housing. Multi-unit housing is fine, it provides a service that's in order to be available, but it's not something that really adds a whole lot of tremendous value to our local neighborhoods. Because nobody wants to live next to a 8-story apartment building with a bunch of people. One of the goals I would like to do is try to keep these multifamily units out of our ward. That is not what Ward 1 is, that is not why we all live in Ward 1, and that's not part of what we love about it. I also want to make sure that we get our fair share of tax dollars. I think Councilor Forrest has done a good job of making sure that we continue to get the money back into our communities. I would like to see additional steps get taken forward. I think we can all take a look at sidewalks or roads or parks that are in need of help, and we need someone to go up there and fight for us to make sure they take care of us. And most importantly, I want to make sure that we're not overextending ourselves on the developments that are going on around the city. The city's been largely funded off of bonds for the city's requirements for so far in the downtown projects and additional projects that are looming. The city has, since 2005, has spent over $120 million worth of city bonds to try to get the downtown area going. And a lot of the projects that are going in there, they're allowing tax cuts that are to go in for the housing that is in there and the commercial spaces down below. With these tax cuts, we are running the risk of having our taxes continue to go up, which is going to affect those of us who are on fixed incomes or going to be in fixed incomes in the next 10 years, and those of us who are lower income. So that's all I really have to say. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me, and I want to keep this short and sweet because nobody wants to hear me ramble for 10 minutes about myself.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Let me ask you some questions.
Absolutely.
Let's first start with this. What do you do for work?
Right now I work at Quincy Mutual Insurance, which is up in Quincy Center next to the post office. I work in the subrogation department. To put it simply, what I do for work is I get bills in from other insurance companies. It's my job to find ways not to pay them or to find things in there that I don't have to pay. So I am everything everyone hates about insurance.
All right. Can you speak to some of the priorities you might have if elected to the city council?
One of my first priorities, I want to make sure we take care of are the roads and the sidewalks. I mean, like I mentioned, there's a ton of them as you walk around the ward that you see. I mean, there's here in Merrymount, they're here in Germantown, they're here in Adams Shore, they're down in House Neck. You take a look at them, you see them, and it's been years and years of neglect. There hasn't been a lot of focus in actually going back towards that. A lot of the parks are also in need of being fixed up, being taken care of as well. You take a look at it, I know the city had recently passed a bunch of funding in order to go and try to improve some of the parks, which I think is a great start, and I would love to see that continue to go forward. I would also like to try to limit the amount of bonds that the city is spending out. As I mentioned, I am worried about as the baby boomer generation continues to move forward and retire, they're all going to be hitting on a fixed income. And I want to make sure that this is a place where if you've lived here your entire life, you continue to live here your entire life.
So on that point, we've heard from many people say, my rent has gone up to a level that I'm not able to afford it. My property taxes have gone up to a level where I'm not able to afford. What's your plan or thoughts on how the city could best mitigate that?
Well, one of the ways to do it is you got to make sure that you have actual businesses. So it's great that we're putting in a lot of the condos and the apartments. The problem is they go over the commercial zonings. So when you go and you get rid of the commercial zone piece of property, let's just, for example, not that this is going to happen, let's just say that Grumpy White's, for whatever reason, decides they're going to fold up shop, go do something else. Ideally, you want to make sure that you get someone in there. You want to try to make sure that these actual businesses remain in place, because when they flip that over to an apartment or a condo, it flips over the tax rate, which is a much lower rate than what we have. We need to try to make sure that we get actual businesses that come in here and set up shop and try to do that. If there's a way in order to try to incentivize companies through the state in Quincy or to come to Quincy, I'm in favor of it.
Dan, what's your background of community involvement here in Quincy?
I was involved in the Elks Lodge for a number of years. I've recently taken a step back since I've had the birth of my kid and got married and bought a house, which occupies a lot of your time. I joined a member of the Elks Lodge when I was 21. My grandfather was huge into the Quincy Elks and thought that that was the bee's knees and the place to go as far as an organization goes. So I was in charge of that up there. When I was up there, we went through a lot of difficult times. We ended up falling behind a few $100,000 in debt beyond what we could actually afford, and it created a lot of difficulties. But during that time, as we had just built a new building, which is what put us in this predicament, I was in charge of membership that was up there, which we led the nation in our division for the 2 years I was involved. And then I ended up being in charge of the Elks Lodge for 1 year. My big community service that I did was veteran fundraising. Through 2010 and 2012, I was able to raise about $8,000 for the Mass State Elks veteran fundraising, try to make sure we get money back to take care of the veterans that are in Quincy. We were able to raise approximately, I believe, $3,000. And as a result of this raising, as this fundraising, we ended up getting grants, which ended up using to go towards the Harvey Saltwater Fishing Club. And that's why the Quincy Elks, as you see today, for those of you who are part of it, is still one of the major sponsors because we're able to go ahead and use that.
What would you say your experience or skill set that you would point to that would make you a successful representative for all of Ward 1 on the City Council?
Well, for one thing, I'm not up here to try to. I'm not running for City Council to talk about myself. I'm not a very selfish person. Being up here and talking about exclusively myself is something outside of my comfort zone. The reason why I go and I'm running to do this to begin with is because I care about all of you. I care about my family. I have friends and family throughout the board. And I think what's really important is that you need someone who actually is very caring and very passionate. And as I mentioned, is referral to my job. One of the things I am really good at is that I am good at negotiating and looking at things. I'm a very logical person. I don't really live out in fantasy land. If you look at it and it makes sense, you look at the nuts and bolts of it, you can go ahead and move forward with it. I mean, that's something that I'm really good at and I'm very passionate towards.
So as I said, we've had our current Ward 1 councillor for the past 8 years. How would your approach to serving as a Ward 1 councillor differ, if at all, from that of our current Ward 1 councillor?
I think Margaret LaForest's goals, or primary goals, which she had set out, was ideal. She wants to try to keep in contact. She wants to keep single families out of here. She wants to improve the parks, and she wants to take care of the seawalls. I mean, ideally, that is the same path that I would like to go. When I was here last week, listening to Councilor LaForest speak, and I thought that was right on point with everything that I'm running. I just want to keep the ship moving in the right direction. I think we all love where we live. I think we all love where we're from. And we would love to keep it the same.
So can you point to any votes or positions that she's taken that you could say, if I'm a Ward 1 councillor, that's not how I would view things?
Yeah, one of the things that have recently pointed out to me was the involvement of the $80 million city bond, which was used for the garage and acquisitioning the building that is next to the floors to be used for. The big difference that you take a look at is the city spent $80 million in bonds, which I understand need to have parking downtown, needed to get rid of that building in order to have it. But I did not agree with necessarily the fact that we had to go and have an underground building, which costs taxpayers roughly about an additional $8 million. I mean, you take a look at a lot of the stuff that you read in the newspaper and a lot of the stuff that you hear about, and you see that you get the votes that get up there in city council. And you see it goes vote through unanimously. And you take a look at it, and from my perspective anyways, I look at it and I think like this doesn't make a whole lot of sense for what's going to help out those of us who continue to move forward to try to take care of our taxes and to try to make sure that we live here.
In the Patriot Ledger, you're quoted as saying, "I'm very much against multi-unit housing." Is there anywhere in Quincy that you would be in favor of multi-unit housing? And if not for some of the new housing in Quincy Center, do you think that we would have attracted some of the new highly touted restaurants that are in that area?
So, to just correct as far as what that went, when I was speaking with the Patriot Ledger, I told him, I said I was very much against multi-unit housing that was going on in the downtown area. I don't feel like hedging all of our bets on luxury high-end apartments is what's best for the city. Nobody wants to live next to an apartment building, and it's real tough to get there. Now, as far as the restaurants that are going in there right now, there's a chance they probably would not have come in there to go and do that. Again, it gets back to the investment the city is making as far as going forward towards the bonds, selling off the city-owned property to these property development companies who are then building the high-end luxury apartments.
One question has come up and that we see here in the Merrymount neighborhood often is people who are cutting through the neighborhood on their commutes. They're coming down right here from Quincy Shore Drive, speeding through, taking a right here, back out to C Street. What are your thoughts on mitigating some of those traffic issues in Ward 1 area?
Well, traffic's going to become a huge concern throughout the city. Unfortunately, one of the unfortunate parts is you end up having a lot of cut-throughs. The only thing you can really do to try to mitigate this is to try to get the traffic department, which has recently been installed, to come around and take a look at this. If it's a chief concern, like if everybody who lives here on this road is complaining heavily about everybody coming here, it might be worth taking a look into putting up a do not enter sign at the top of the street if that's something the neighbors are in favor of. Or if you feel like people are driving too fast, you put in a speed bump.
Last question here, Dan. We're almost up with our time here. What's your plan and what do you think the city could do better in terms of fighting against the opioid epidemic impacting our city and all of the South Shore area?
Battling the opioid epidemic it's a daunting task. The problem is that the company that produces Oxycontin, Oxycodone, fentanyl, all those opioid drugs, Purdue Pharma, they're worth approximately $13 billion. So it's going to be very tough to try to limit the availability of it throughout the ward. There isn't much you can do. Is typically you go up to a party and people will have those drugs available, and people will use them, or they'll get injuries and get themselves addicted to them. Now, nobody wants to be addicted to any type of drug, and it's very tough to get off of those because they're opium-based prescriptions, which opium is illegal for its highly addictive purposes. The way that I see it is that you're not going to be able to combat stopping Purdue Pharma from putting out drugs. You're not going to combat doctors from writing up prescriptions. The only thing you can do is just try to provide the proper services to make sure that people are available. I know one of the big popular things that's been going on in Canada, which they've seen good success with, is they try to have safe zones in which people who do have these addictions are able to go in there and use them in a free environment, which will have Narcan available if in the event that they overdose. Now, the reason why they're doing this is because they want to get these individuals in there to try to get them straightened up, get them in there. You have professionals in there that can help them. Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily the right step to go ahead and do, but I think it might be something that'd be worthwhile taking a look into, because I don't think any of us want to see any more friends or family or family's friends to go ahead and see them pass away. I mean, something drastic needs to happen, and I know that's not something that anybody wants to have in the neighborhood, and it would be something that would have to be looked at and addressed moving forward, but the overdoses just need to stop and you need to do something different to change.
All right, Dan, thank you for answering all the questions, and thank you for running, and thank you for your interest in the city of Quincy. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
All right, coming up to the microphone next is candidate Joe Murphy.
Thank you, everyone. I'm very excited to be here tonight and to talk to all of you. I want to thank Mark and the Merrymount Association for putting this together. It's a really nice event. I know my fellow candidates and I really appreciate this opportunity. I also want to acknowledge Councilor LaForest, who I don't believe is here, but we are replacing our incumbent, Margaret LaForest, who has served Quincy's Ward 1 for several terms. And while no politician enjoys universal approval, from my door knocking, I can tell you that she has helped a lot of people in Ward 1. And so I just want to acknowledge and thank her for that. Great. Many of you don't know me. I didn't grow up around here. My wife and I moved here in 2007, and we are what I like to call Quincy by choice. We had the whole Boston area to choose from, and when we found Quincy, we thought it felt like home. So since I'm not born here, I'm getting to know all of you, and these past few months running for office has been a pleasure. So I'd like to tell you why I'm running for office. We are in the midst of a huge transformation in Quincy. We are in the middle of a revitalization, and we are also approaching our 400th anniversary. This is the time when priorities are going to be set, decisions are going to be made, and if we're not careful, mistakes can be made. So I thought this was a good time to get involved and help set the agenda for my daughter's hometown here, Quincy. So, what do I want to do? I want to push for smart development. I thought Dan said a lot of great things about the overdevelopment going on in Quincy right now. We need to be careful and respect the integrity of our neighborhoods. While there's a temptation to stuff as many high-end apartments as we can into the city, in the long run, it's not going to make the city's quality of life any better. And we're going to wind up regretting some of those decisions, I believe. So as Ward 1 councilor, what I would do is fight hard to make sure that we don't put incongruous development projects in amongst neighborhoods like this, like Howe's Neck, like Gull Point, Germantown. These are neighborhoods that don't need to see this kind of development. So what I want to do is give the zoning board the regulations they need to help protect the integrities of our neighborhood. And I want to organize neighborhood committees. When one of these projects is up for, I want to make sure that we have a whole band of people at those zoning board meetings organized and ready to speak and let the zoning board know what we think. I'm not anti-development, but I am for smart development. I want to also bring more amenities to Quincy. This is one of the things I've been talking about since the beginning. We have a lot of businesses that thrive here, but we don't have a huge variety. Case in point, now this is a little outside Ward 1, but the old Willie's Burgers on Washington Street is being turned into a Dunkin' Donuts. There is a Dunkin' Donuts like 2 feet from it at Washington and Southern Artery. And there's about 7 Dunkin' Donuts within 3 miles of that location, 3 square miles. That location could have been something else. Some of the things I've been pushing for are maker spaces, science concerns, art concerns, music concerns, things that will enrich our lives, will educate our youth, and help us just have more fun together as people. Don't get me wrong, I do love Dunkin' Donuts. I'm a twice-a-day customer, and I'm certainly not picking on them, but Quincy's got them, and we got a lot of them. So I'm for encouraging and facilitating partnerships with other types of businesses that we don't see here as often. We lost our last theater in the last couple of years. On a different note, our hospital was unceremoniously taken away from us. It seems like we outsource a lot of services in Quincy, where we could be spending our money here and employing people here. We wind up having to leave Quincy to have fun and enrich ourselves. I also want to reprioritize how we're spending our budget. Don't get me wrong, world-class green spaces and huge maritime centers are wonderful concepts, and I support them conceptually. But let me ask people here, and you don't have to shout out, but just ask yourselves, are you satisfied with our roads? Are you satisfied with our water mains? They're over 100 years old and they're collapsing. Mr. Ramundi will tell you. there are plenty of other things that we could be prioritizing as a city. And I think we can improve our parks, improve our green spaces, but still keep the bones of this city healthy. We're celebrating 400 years. We need to keep the structure healthy. So it reminds me of something my mom said to me as a kid often. She said, you do your homework before you play outside, and you eat your dinner before you have dessert. And I feel with some of our luxury projects we're talking about, we're putting dessert first. So I want to also stand up for my fellow commuters. The MBTA, I think, has mistreated Quincy for years. Has anyone stood on a platform in winter and froze? That's me, every winter. And I think with doing all 4 of our Quincy stations over at the same time, the MBTA has shown terrible planning, terrible leadership. And it's up to our city council and our mayor to tell them that we understand, we're happy that you're going to put some new stations in here, but you've got to do it in a way that's not on the backs of Quincy citizens. Because right now, they're basically saying, sorry, it's going to be tough. Well, that's not good enough, because there's a lot of people that take the T up into Boston, up into Cambridge, and they're going to give up on the T, and they're going to wind up in cars, and they're going to be on the roads with you. So I'm just telling you now, we cannot forget about our commuters. And another priority of mine is the environment. You look around, we see lots of our children here, and I want Quincy to be part of the solution for their future. Right now, we can do better as a community. I'm calling on Mayor Koch to join the climate mayors. There's almost 400 cities in this country now that have pledged to abide by the Paris Agreement. We should be one of those cities. We should be doing our best to reduce single-use plastic bag use. We don't have to do a ban, but we can change the culture with education, and I have a plan to sell advertisement on those 10-cent, high-quality plastic bags and letting them be available to our residents. We have waterways here. When those plastic bags end up in our waterways, they're eaten by fish. They are litter problems. It's an issue. They break down, but they don't biodegrade. So I won't get into the details of plastic right now. But there's other things I want to do. I want to prevent retail establishments from throwing out donatable goods because it didn't sell. I've worked at a few retail places in this area, and I can tell you it's an obscene practice that happens at almost all of them. We should work to make partnerships between worthwhile charities and these retail establishments so that goods can be donated and not wind up in a landfill. And we should pass regulations so that new construction in business communities incorporates alternate energy, skylights, and water reclamation so that our businesses are setting an example for the community at large. So I have a lot of other issues, and they're all at my table. I hope you stop by and take a look, and I'd like to meet with all of you. And take it away, Mark.
All right, thank you, Joe. First question, I jotted this down as you were speaking. Can you give us an example of smart development and where you would like to see multi-unit residential properties in Quincy?
I don't think it's a bad idea to put multi-unit properties around our T stations. If for any other reason, there will be people that take those apartments who are not going to necessarily need a car. We have a parking issue in Quincy. We have traffic in Quincy. If we're putting these developments in places where cars are needed, we're just going to exacerbate that problem. Experience or skill set that you think would make you a successful representative on the city council? Oh, I should have mentioned. I'm currently an administrator at MIT. I'm the assistant director of administration for the Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT, where my job description is budgets, finance, intellectual property, sponsor relations, grant proposals, and grant management. I think those skills translate pretty directly to this job. How would your approach to serving as our representative differ, if at all, from our current Ward 1 City Councilor? One thing that I admire about Councilor LaForest is her ability to communicate through the internet. I would take it a step further, and in addition to having Facebook and Twitter, I want to have weekly office hours where people can come find me in any of our Ward 1 establishments. It'll be varied. Soft drinks would be on me, and we can sit down and chat in person. I think getting to know people person to person and my door knocking has been truly enlightening, and it's something I want to carry through if elected.
Joe, what's your background or record of community involvement or service in Quincy?
In Quincy, most of my community involvement has been through volunteering with the HouseNet Community Council for various activities like Chowder Fest or Chili Fest setup and breakdown. I've also been a frequent participant in the Cleaner, Greener Quincy campaign. And I think that is one of my favorite things about living in Quincy, getting together with your neighbors and picking a specific project that you care about and working on that. And if they're up to me, I would like to take Cleaner, Greener Quincy and put it on steroids. I'd like to have it every season. I'd like to be out there in the snow doing it. I just think it's something that it's good for the kids, it's good for the community, and that would be something I'd want to look into.
Joe, on your issues page on your website, you said that you believe Quincy should declare itself to be a sanctuary city. Can you explain your position on this further?
Sure. My sanctuary city position came out of what happened last year with the city council when Councilor Liang suggested a discussion. And quite honestly, I was disappointed that the discussion was not allowed to proceed. Whether you agree or disagree, I think we can all agree that in a democracy we need to talk to each other and we need to communicate. Yes, I believed that we should have this discussion, and I decided that I would try to start the discussion amongst the people that read my website and say what I was for. I do think we should be a sanctuary city designation. To be honest, the Quincy Police Department's current policy works fine for me. I fear that not a lot of people who would be affected by it are aware of their policy. So why do I think we should be a sanctuary city? First of all, I do think history will judge us based off that decision. But it's also economics. We do not need to be paying our local police force, who are already taxed to the limit, to carry out questionably unconstitutional orders. So I don't want to pay for them to be an immigration force. We are paying them to be our local police force. Safety is the main condition, though. I will tell a real quick story, and I promise I'll make it quick. When I lived in California, my apartment complex was being retarred, the roof. And I was working at home, and I heard this horrible scream outside. When I went outside, I found a young man covered in hot tar. He either had fallen off the roof or the tar had fallen on him. I wasn't sure. He was screaming in pain, and we doused him with fire extinguishers. And we immediately called 911, and he begged us not to. His skin was on fire, but he begged us not to call 911 because he did not want to be deported. He needed to go to the hospital, and he eventually did. But we need people in this city to be able to call the police without fear. If they think there's a drug deal going down across the street, they need to be able to call. If their grandmother has tripped and fallen and possibly hurt her hip, they should not hesitate. And that's why I support our police's policies right now, and that's why I think we should make it official.
Joe, last question here. We're almost out of time. What is your plan and thoughts in regards to Father Bill's homeless shelter? Do you see it staying in its current location? Would you try to do what you could to move it to a new location? Can you give us your thoughts there?
You're going to make me certainly popular, Mark. Father Bill's. I actually went and visited with them a couple months ago. I met with their administrative staff. They gave me a tour of the facility. And I just want to say, first of all, that's not part of your question, but these are amazing people there. They do amazing work, and you can see that they all care deeply for the residents there. I talked to Father Bill's because people reached out to me via email saying they were concerned about homeless people in the library, homeless people going up and down the street, being at the MBTA station. So I talked to them about it, and they were very sympathetic to those concerns. And what they said was, we're a shelter. Every morning, we kick these people out. They're allowed to come back for lunch, but then we kick them out again. And then they line up. We need a day program. And that's what I think Father Bills needs. Father Bills needs treatment and services, job placement, housing placement services during the day for the people, the residents of Father Bills. Don't forget, we also have a lot of homeless veterans at Father Bills. These people need help, and I would do my best to help Father Bills in their mission.
Let me ask you one last question here. Just, the crowd might not know what you meant by this. What do you mean by maker spaces? Where would you see those in Quincy?
Okay, a makerspace is a digital fabrication laboratory that lets average folks, instead of like the engineers at MIT I work with, go in and learn how to use tools like laser cutters, mills, 3D printers. They learn carpentry skills, they learn electronic skills, they learn computer programming. These are all skills that we're going to need going forward as robots take over more and more of the job space. To be competitive, if we really want the tech corridor to come into Quincy and benefit this community, our people need our skills. And a makerspace is a fun place to do that. Kids of all ages go in there, adults. At MIT, we deploy them all over the world. And we have users in their 90s, and we have users that are my daughter's age. And they're all learning the same skills. It's not just for young people. And it's not just about educating them to be in the workplace. We're starting entrepreneurship. You have an idea. Has anybody had an idea for a product? You thought, if I could make this, maybe I could do something. Businesses come out of these makerspaces. Small businesses with inventions. And artistic endeavors come out of there as well. People sell their products on Etsy from things they've made with 3D printers and laser cutters. It's like shop class for the next century. And I don't think Quincy should wait till every other town has one before deciding to do it.
All right, Joe, thank you for answering questions. Thank you for running. And thank you.